has been ordered to pay more than $60,000 to WBTV. This after a judge found the district improperly withheld public records detailing reports of sexual violence. Thanks for joining us for your News at 6. I'm Siobhan Bryan.
And I'm John Carter. And it's a story WBTV's chief investigative reporter Nick Oxer has been fighting to uncover for years.
Nick now joins us live from the Government Center with the latest developments. Nick.
Yeah, Siobhan, John, I have spent the past 4 years trying to dig deeper and hold Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools accountable over the way it handles reports of rapes and sexual assaults on campus. As part of that included filing a public records lawsuit against Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools in 2021. I filed that lawsuit after the district refused to produce records, including spreadsheets detailing reported sexual violence over the course of a decade. Previously, the district claimed to have received just 2 reports of rape at any Charlotte-Mecklenburg school in a 10-year period. But then these documents were leaked to me, detailing exactly what was reported and at what school. The problem? CMS's own general counsel said under oath that those very documents didn't exist. Late last week, a judge handed down a new ruling finding that CMS engaged in, quote, improper conduct in withholding the records, that the district did not act in reasonable reliance on any law or court order and made arguments that were, quote, misplaced. So, what do Charlotte-Mecklenburg school leaders, elected members of the school board, have to say about the district withholding this important student safety data? This is what happened when I tried to ask school leaders about this issue last June, after I first learned that these records did in fact exist. And today, the board issued a new statement that didn't answer any of my questions, nor did it address the judge's findings that the district acted improperly. So I caught up with the school board just about an hour ago before they started their board meeting. The judge found that the district acted inappropriately. So do you as the school board chairwoman not think that is wrong for the school board to have acted inappropriately in the view of a judge?
So that is, we issued our decision.
It doesn't explain why the board is continuing to support the district knowingly making misstatements, and the judge ruled the district acted inappropriately, and you have not addressed that.
We did not rule that it was knowingly acted any particular way.
And there you have school board chairwoman Stephanie Snead doubling down again on Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools keeping student safety data secret from the public, making claims about a judge's ruling. You can read that ruling for yourself. It's online right now at WBTV.com. For now, reporting live at the Government Center, Nick Oxer, WBTV, on your side.
All right, excellent work there, Nick. Thanks for digging into that. Thank you. All right, breaking news.